We would like to thank Her Excellency, the Prime Minister, Kamya Prasad. With these words, she contagied us with the joy that they are known for, with this energy revolution that exists currently. And it's an invitation to invest in this field. And what is more important, the reforms that are being done in this regard. Energy is the subject matter for the first panel this morning. Energy, fueling the America's growth. And returning to the words of this abundant energy resource that exists in Latin America, it's important to align this with equality and efficiency with sustainable energy. Let's watch the video. Llegó a su punto más fuerte el consumo de energía la década pasada. En Latinoamérica sigue aumentándose. Los latinoamericanos consumen aproximadamente una quinta parte de los estadounidenses y canadienses, pero el consumo incrementará 40% en el próximo década. La población de automóviles se espera que crezca 66 a 93 millones de automóviles. ¿De dónde vendrá toda esa energía?
Or can we develop enough renewable resources?
Vamos a recibir a nuestro...
We will now receive the moderator for this morning in this panel, Energy, Fueling the America's Growth. Roger Ingold, the Managing Director of Accenture Latin America. Welcome, good day. We also receive our panelists for today, Alejandro Bulgaroni, the Chairman, President, and CEO of Associated Petroleum Investors. Reinaldo Garcia, the President and CEO of General Electric Latin America. Andrés Gluski, the Director, President, and CEO of AES Corporation. Sylvia Escobar Gomez, the President of Terpel. Ali Moshiri, the President of Chevron Africa and Latin America Exploration. To all of you, good day and welcome. Please feel at home.
To be here with you this morning and to talk about energy and how energy can fuel the growth in the Americas. We do recognize that yesterday we had very exciting panels around women empowerment, innovation and entrepreneurship, access to internet, food security and others. And in this sense, energy can look boring for the others. But I'm sure in Latin America it's not the case. Energy is extremely important, although more traditional. Since the first time the human beings, they made fire in the 700,000 years before Christ, or all the evolution of energy. But energy impacted and had many consequences in our geopolitics, in our economies, and so on and so forth. So if we take this moment in the world, we are probably in the moment of a big disruption in energy as well. So we see the barrel price at $50 or less. We see many different technologies coming. We see the environmental pressures that we have. So all of this together brings the need of a good discussion. So if we take Latin America more specifically, we have a middle class that is growing and demanding energy. So although energy is not that exciting as internet and other things, but I would wonder what would happen if we didn't have air conditioning or lights or mics here in this room. So on this, we are very lucky to have a fantastic panel, a fantastic group of panelists that covers all the aspects of the value chain, if you will, of energy. We have Alejandro Bulgaroni, who covers from investment to exploration. We have Andrés, probably the change, we need to change some. We have Andrés Gluski, who is in electricity and renewable energies. We have Ali Moshiri, who is the responsible for Chevron in Latin America and in Africa, more in the exploration and production. We have Sylvia Escobar, who is in the distribution side and the customer service side. We have Reinaldo Garcia, who in the end sells equipment, technology, and knowledge to all of these industries. And finally, we have Eulogio Del Pino, who runs PDVSA in Venezuela. So we have a fantastic group here to start our discussion. We have a couple of questions that we are going to conduct. So, I will start if you don't mind. So, going to our questions, the first question would be around the impact, obviously, the impact of the cost, the price of the barrel in the economies, in the growth of Latin America. I would like Alejandro, if he can start. If you want to add some perspective, feel free. But Alejandro, I would like to see your comments on that. If you want to respond in Spanish, that's fine. We have a translation real time here. Thank you.
Bueno, muchas gracias.
Well, thank you very much, and good day to all of you. I'd like to thank the IDB for this invitation and Panama for their warm welcome. Many years ago, in the 70s, when the price of oil multiplied many times over, the economy reacted strongly. There was an economic standstill, recession, and this took industrial countries of the OECD to a reflection about disengaging from oil. At that point in time, in order to produce one PBI, we needed a unit of petroleum. Nowadays, the countries of the OECD, they have 0.35 of a barrel of a unit of petroleum to produce a percentage of GDP. So the impact of oil on the economies of developed countries is much smaller. It's still very important, but it's much smaller. Countries that are less developed, on the other hand, in Latin America, there are different levels of impact with regards to the price of oil. Underdeveloped countries have not had the same technological innovations. Although there's been an important influence, it hasn't been total. So growth in the countries of Latin America with low levels of development and that very much rely on hydrocarbons, well, this is going to improve as the price goes down. There's the case of Venezuela, which is the one that is suffering most from the fall in the price of oil. And then we have the United States and Canada, which, despite the fact that there has been an impact on the economy, it has been positive overall.
Any addition, any comment?
Yes, thank you very much. And thank you to the IDB for giving us the opportunity to participate in this panel, sharing space with such distinguished panelists. With regards to the price of oil, allow me to say that if anything, the oil business is used to variations in the price of oil throughout history and in recent years. And for instance, throughout the course of my career, we've gone from $7 to $8 in the 90s, falls of over $100 in 6 months, as we had in the year 2008. So this fall isn't even as dramatic as the one in 2008. And the oil industry, I think, is prepared for it. I think that national oil industries, such as is Venezuela's case, we're prepared. The way to take this on and face it is with creative solutions. Solutions that go beyond the conventional, such as reducing costs and increasing efficiency, especially in logistical processes. That's how we traditionally address it. But there are other solutions. One that we deal with directly For instance, having producers complement each other. Nowadays, we have very important light crude producers that have been displaced from the market, displaced from traditional markets, such as Petróleos de Venezuela, with a great amount of potential and a great production. How can each of these complement each other to enter the refined market, or the market of refineries, that has been designed for intermediate crude, neither very light nor very heavy? So these synergies and this reduction of cost could help us increase the efficiency of investments without resorting to huge insertions of capital, for instance, the processing of very heavy crude. This could also be complemented by producers that nowadays have been displaced from traditional markets. We can join forces with producers of heavy crude, such as Mexico and Venezuela, to enter the refinery market, which perhaps none of us could enter on our own. That's a specific way of reducing those costs. On the other hand, countries such as ours have mechanisms for increasing the efficiency of education. We have several mixed companies in Venezuela, and nowadays we're taking advantage of financial leverage that the country is offering us in order to increase the efficiency of investments in our new investments, the investments that are necessary in order to develop the new fields in Orinoco. So I and others feel that we need a lot of creativity and a lot of strategic alliances between producers.
Efficiency and productivity. I would like to have the comment of Ali Moshir, if you can, from your experience in exploration, including outside of Latin America.
Thank you very much. Let me build up on my friend, Mr. Eloy Del Pino, commented on. The price environment, this is not the first time that we've gone through it. It happened before, it's going to repeat it. Therefore, we've got to be prepared for it, and it's give us a time that we do certain things to improve efficiency. Number one, cost of goods and services during the high prices was exponential. And I think we need to bring that one in the normalized price. Therefore, we'll be able to build infrastructure and expand. Taking this America as a whole, this is a great opportunity for America to just start focusing on building the infrastructure for energy. Latin America, in general, it doesn't lack resources. It has tremendous resources. Taking Venezuela, Venezuela has more oil and energy than Saudi Arabia. The main thing in here, how do you build an infrastructure and you be able to transport and spread that infrastructure throughout the continent? If you look at it, there is hardly any piece of pipe or the gas or oil pipeline in northern part of the Latin America or South America, with the exception of one that was built between Colombia and Venezuela. Secondly, we got to develop human resources. This is a time that we got to bring the new generation of the engineers, scientists into our business. This is a time that we can develop in. We don't call it a slow era, but it's really important to do that. Secondly is, we've got to lower the operating costs. We've got to become more efficient. We've got to do things better, and we've got to do it cheaper. Efficiency doesn't mean cost cutting. Efficiency means doing things more at the lower cost. Our industry needs that, and this is a great period to do it. And it applies to a big company like PDVSA or Chevron or other company. All of us got to get a focus on that. We're going to come out of these low prices, and we got to be prepared how we're going to manage the energy demand going to face us. And I think that's the responsibility big company like YPF, PDVSA, Chevron, and others have, to prepare for the time that that energy requirement is there, and make sure we fuel the system with the affordable energy that makes sure global economy continue to grow. And I believe in Latin America as a whole, this is the time that everybody got to focus on building that necessary infrastructure to make sure energy get around. And if energy get around, the economy going to grow. And that's today is the obstacle for this continent. Thank you very much.
So just to continue our panel, and considering that today we will have all the leaders of the region, and obviously we would like to leave a message or some recommendations. So what does Latin America lack in terms of infrastructure or attractiveness for investment? Maybe we should start with Reinaldo, if you can give your perspective on that.
No, thanks, Roger. You know, when in terms of energy, electricity, you look at Latin American countries, we see many countries with significant challenges, socioeconomic development challenges towards sustainable economic growth. One enabler for social economic development is inexpensive power, inexpensive electricity. Okay? And as my colleagues here have pointed out, the irony is that Latin America is blessed with a disproportionate amount of natural resources, the energy resources, right? With Venezuela, Mexico, Colombia, Argentina, Brazil, and you name it. It's just, the list is pretty large. At the same time, it has some of the most expensive electricity in the world, okay? Except for a few countries, the price of power, the price of electricity is between 15 and 40 cents kilowatt hour. 15 to 40, compared to 4 to 5 in the United States. It doesn't seem to be fair, right? So what we really need is inexpensive power. On top of this inexpensive power, you also have some of the highest losses of the system. You know, in Latin America, the losses of the electric system are 17%, which are the highest in the world. So you got expensive power, losses. These two together rob the countries in Latin America between 1 and 2 points of GDP per year. So we need inexpensive power, right? And when you think, let's think about Central America, the geography here, the challenges are pretty interesting because you have, it's pretty long and narrow, and then you have the islands all over the place. So it's the ability to have a critical mass and centralized power. We can take electricity over the lines and over hundreds and thousands of kilometers. It is challenging. So in some places, in some of the countries, you might be able to justify a large power plant with 300, 350, a little bit more megawatts. But in many of the places, the power probably makes more sense to be generated at close to the point of use, so what we call distributed power. And then the good thing is that there are technologies that allow for this. You have obviously a lot of the renewable possibilities, but also gas powered the engines and turbines. Also have diesel generators. The problem is that these are very, the pollution, the emissions are extremely high, right? But so as we look forward, I think in many of the countries in Latin America, I have distributed power generated at the point of use as the main part of the backbone of the system. And in places where, you know, larger countries, places with larger population, or have more critical mass, than bigger centralized power generation. So there's a place for both. The good thing is these things are solvable. Now, we got to have policies that help with this, and some of the countries are going through this process right now, and I think you know, we are really at a time where things are about to change, and I think I'm actually optimistic about this, Roger.
Very good. Let's move to a little bit to another field, because we tend to talk a lot about the traditional energy. So you have, if you take the the United Nations, it said that this decade, 2014-2024, will be the decade of sustainable energy. At the same time, you take Latin America, you have 57% of the energy matrix already in sustainable and renewable sources. On the other hand, if you project some growth of middle class and everything that you take in the region, potentially the IDB study says that we'll need by 2030 twice the energy, the electricity we have today. So can we imagine that we're going to fill this gap with fundamental energy, different energy matrix in renewable energies? Is this possible or not? Maybe Andrés could give his perspective on that to start.
I think that when we talk about the amount of renewable energy that you can put on the grid in Latin America, you have the situation that right now it's very low carbon intensity in Latin America. It's about 60% hydro. We have more hydropower than any other part of the world. Now, I think concentrating too much on just one type of energy is risky. And we're seeing the effects today, and we've seen the effects in the past. When you have droughts, right now there's a drought that starts all the way in California and ends in Antarctica. And it's affecting a lot of countries. It affected here in Panama, for example. So I think we have to think of not only having the energy, but having a robust matrix of energy. And that means different sources of energy. Thermal power has to play a role. And so, for example, here in Panama, just this week, AES, we inaugurated a barge that we brought down to help have more thermal power on basically a hydro system. I think Brazil is seeing the same, that they need more gas to have more thermal power. So I think Latin America must think about having a robust system, because the most expensive electricity is the one that you don't have. And just see the effects of rationing in Brazil in, say, the year 2002, Colombia in 1992 as well. So we have to avoid that. When you talk about renewables, we're in very interesting times because things are changing. One of the unique things about electricity is you can't store it unless you have a dam. You can store water, but you can't store electricity. So with distributed energy and with the renewables, one of the things lacking is storage. Now, fortunately, there are breakthroughs, for example, in lithium-ion batteries. And at AES, we're the world leader in this. So I think there are very interesting opportunities to combine lithium-ion batteries for use with renewables and, for example, distributed generation, smaller grids. And one of the things that our largest project, and actually it's been up and running for over a year, is in Chile. So we think that the technology is changing, there are opportunities. So my answer is yes, Latin America has a lot of energy resources. It can meet this challenge. It can meet it in a carbon light way, but I think we have to keep always in mind a balance, because if you go too much just for renewables, especially on hydro, you're making yourself vulnerable.
Any additional perspective from the group? I'm wondering, Alejandro?
Bueno, el uso de distintas formas de generar energía en la ecuación energética del mundo a través de muchos años.
Over many years, has varied. Let's start with biomass. We continue with carbon, oil,
Después carbón, petróleo y gas.
then coal, oil, and gas, and then the hydroelectric issue and the nuclear as well, which today is very punished. But there are countries such as France that have 39% of their energy matrix that is nuclear. So in the case of Latin America, Brazil is a very special case. There are others as well, but not as much as Brazil in regards to hydraulic power, which makes the whole of Latin America having a large proportion of hydraulic energy. I believe that due to the current price of petroleum, the energy equation will continue approximately at 80–85% fossil fuels, and the rest will be alternative. Over the last years, it is true that the high prices of oil have financed, in a way, the growth of alternative means: wind power, solar power, biomass. And what is most important in all of this are the technological advances made here. I differ somewhat, because in regards to energy, there have been tremendous technological breakthroughs. As of today, a solar panel, solar energy, is at, in regards to its installation, that are quite competitive with what hydrocarbons are at. In the case of wind power, it is also competitive. So what is the problem? That solar energy and wind power are not a constant. So one must also have fossil fuels that produce energy as a backup for all the rest. So there is something like a duplication. What I say is that so long as oil prices are low, there will be very little growth. But even if there is all the growth that one might want to get, because many times countries support this, they have done so systematically over the last 2 decades, the growth of the world's consumption will be such that it will enable this proportion to be maintained. Now, what is most important in all of this, the next breakthrough that I see happening is storing energy, because if one has a solar or wind power facility and you can have a set of batteries that makes it be efficient to store energy for when there is no wind or solar power, you can have a system that could reach a pretty good balance to where you do not require fossil fuels. So this is the great development that I see happening. So I believe here we're making important progress, and I think that this could lead to changing the situation in the world over the next years.
And I think I would like to get the point of, I think Andrés mentioned, the most expensive electricity is the one that you don't have. And the region clearly needs to continue to expand its power capability and installed base. But I think it's important to look really at the mix, the energy matrix, okay? And I think in Latin America, we're going through a transformation now, okay? I think obviously you talked about some of the hydro capability, that's very important, okay? But as we go forward, I think expanding that energy matrix to other sources of power is extremely important. And I think this is where there's absolutely a role for renewables. Wind is very viable. The evolution in the technology improvements in wind has been significant over the last few years. Solar has had a lot of improvements, and it will continue to have. But as much as it is a great source of power and clean, the issue is intermittent. The wind does not blow 24 hours a day in the same direction with the same speed at the same altitude, okay? The sun doesn't shine 24 hours a day, so you need to complement that. And gas is a vital base load for ensuring that you have a continuous and efficient form of electricity at any time that you need, okay? So gas becoming the base load more and more, I think this is an important transformation that's going on in the world, one that is happening and should continue to happen here in Latin America, particularly in Central America and Caribbean. It's a cleaner form of fossil fuel. You know, when you compare, for instance, diesel or high HFO, emissions are like 2,000 parts per million from diesel, 2,000 parts per million. Gas, it's between 9 and 30. Okay, let's take an average, 20 and 2,000. So it's 100 times less pollutant when you think in terms of gas power generation. And then the technologies that are available now improves efficiency. So I think it's really an important evolution from a technology standpoint that can ensure continuous social economic development, and particularly bring resilience to the power system, the electric system, because you have a very consistent and reliable base load of power generation with gas, okay? Now, it's important that we deal with some of the challenges, and I think that's where governments, private sector, multilateral financial institutions need to come together to resolve some of this from a financing standpoint. Important, I mean, these are big projects that require a lot of financing. The fragmentation of the market in some places, particularly Central America, where you don't have large populations and there's a long distance between where the use of electricity is taken. The fuel source, the supply of gas, for instance, so these things have to be resolved. I was very pleased to see that yesterday Ministry of Energy from Jamaica and Secretary of Energy Moniz from the United States signed an agreement, a collaboration agreement in the provision of gas, trying to resolve some of the gas supply. So I think these are the kind of things that we're gonna see going forward here, with gas becoming a very important component of the total energy matrix in complement to additional renewable source that will come into the installed capacity of the region.
Just so we probably need to elaborate a little more on this, because all of this economic equation is really broken, and at this point where you have oil moving so low, so all the projects that were underway. So I propose that we, in the next question, we try to explore this a little more, because I suspect there are projects that were approved and underway that are being revisited as we speak. But before doing this, me gustaría de pasar dos preguntas a la audiencia que fueron sugeridas por la organización.
I would like to pass on two questions to the audience that were suggested.
Pads aí para responder,
voting pads,
me apreciaria.
Please, to answer, I would appreciate that.
Seria possível? Não, são as perguntas que estão acá.
The questions that are here. Thank you.
We'll continue in the next one. Will be Sylvia's for sure. So there are two questions that we'd like just to see your reactions, and related to what we're discussing now. So the investment still let's interesting. Very good. Thanks for your responses. So let's move to Sylvia then, and going to the other side of the chain, Sylvia. Sylvia is more in the distribution side, the customer service, in something that is very commoditized. So what are your ideas, and how can you strive and gain market share in such a competitive environment? Give us a little bit of your thoughts. Thanks.
Bueno, yo quisiera empezar con lo que empezó
I would like to begin with what Roger said at the introduction, that the issue of energy is quite boring. I believe there's nothing more boring than offering gas. And the truth is that the idea was to find a way to decommoditize a product. But we at Terpel, because we are in so many countries, currently we're present in 6 countries. In fact, we are very proud of Panama because it was one of the first countries where we dared to leave Colombia and grow and decommoditize. We did not commoditize a product. Gasoline might be the same, especially in Colombia, where additionally we buy from one same state provider. Gasoline, although sometimes they didn't want to change the color or the smell, but that wasn't the point. I believe it's very relevant to the summit, and it's to decommoditize a concept. It is to become a brand that is truly a partner for the country, a partner for the final consumer, a partner for citizenship, a partner for institutions, and a partner of the country. And we have been able to achieve this with many things that have to do additionally with the objectives for the Summit of the Americas in many regards. For example, they were speaking of infrastructure. Ali was. I'm convinced that if in these countries of the Americas, if we do not improve infrastructure, we will not be able to be efficient, we will not be able to be competitive, we will not be able to achieve the equality needed in all of our countries. So The issue of infrastructure, and you can see this if you drive down the roads of Panama. I hope you stay for the weekend because it's an amazingly beautiful country. You see petrol stations that are very different, where drivers have a shower if they want to stop, where there's good food at really good prices, where the issue of sustainability, environmental sustainability, is a non-negotiable, where you find plants around. These are things you would never imagine seeing at a petrol station. We work for the service that is offered, especially because of one of these things that are referring to exporting non-traditional services such as tourism. We are beginning to train many people in all the countries where we work so that they can know how to sell these non-traditional services. In regards to developing talent, not only do we hire people, we are creating schools, academies, where they perfect one of the things that the summit has said, the CEO summit. How can we improve the technical talent of our people? We are creating schools in aviation, marines, transportation, land transportation services. And the issue of financial instruments, which has a lot to do with innovation. Countries in Latin America, especially, and I can say so in the case of Colombia, there are many people who are not part of the banking system, many of our citizens, so we are trying to offer credit cards that do not have a monthly cost, so that people can have access to bank services, so that they can create their financial history, and that tomorrow they can have access to financial services. Can they buy fuel with it? Yes. But we are achieving things that go much further than that. We are achieving much more efficient processes in order to have a way to transfer this efficiency at the prices needed for the final users. There are technological innovations, like, for example, and here we can speak of the interregional union. A bus can leave from the northern region of Colombia and can reach Guajira without needing a single peso, because there is an innovation being made that allows us to charge through these kits, and the full chain begins to generate employment and innovation. I could tell you many more things that have to do with all these changes, business changes that we must begin to make. But I want to begin by one that I believe is vital. In fact, there are two that go together, and it's how can we generate a dialogue with our government so that we can have regulations that are more aligned with productivity and competitivity that we require. We have been doing this for many years, and we have been able to create the trust needed between businesses and government so that they know that the things that we are saying are not only to benefit the company, but also to benefit the country as a whole. And this is how these transactional costs that in Latin America are so high due to the lack of trust between the private and public sectors begin to be reduced, and we can have more competitive companies. And this is aligned with something that I believe is not said sufficiently in the CEO summit and should be, and it's a war against corruption. Companies have a ways to go in this regard. Corruption is the greatest harm in regards to growth, equality. If we can join together and create a chain among all companies and businesses, that we can really declare war on corruption, we will have more productive, efficient countries and with greater equality, if I can say so. Many thanks.
I would like to see Andrés' perspective on that, on service and differentiation as well, if you don't mind.
Bueno, me gustaría hablar un poquito sobre la inclusión social.
I would like to speak of social inclusion, since you mentioned it. I believe this is very important. The most important thing to improve the quality of life of our citizens is access to drinking water, and the second is access to electricity. And in Latin America, there are still millions of people that do not have access to electricity. And how are we going to solve this problem? Well, I believe it's very important, it was mentioned, that governments in the private sector, the multilateral banks, the agencies, charities, that we all come together to really be able to counter and face this poverty, because innovation, new technologies, if there's not access to electricity, for example, you will not have innovations such as that of the internet. People are left outside of this information revolution that exists currently. So some examples of things that have worked, together with Fund Millennium as part of the Millennium Challenge in El Salvador, Más Luz para Todos in Brazil, we have brought electricity to 600,000 people over the last 10 years. Additionally, working with the governments, once again, we have been able to regulate the illegal connections to the electricity grid in Sao Paulo, offering safe energy to more than 2 million people. So these people are already benefiting from social inclusion. They can already participate in this revolution of the internet, and I believe this is very important. What I think we need to do is work together, because this cannot be done alone. The governments cannot do it alone. The private sector cannot do it without the appropriate regulatory framework, for example, and also without the help of the multilateral banks such as the IDB. We need this support. When we work together, there you have an example. There are more than 13 million people that are included in with benefiting from electricity, and it has improved their quality of life. And I believe this is something that we need to achieve with the summit. Have a conversation to see how we can work together and face this poverty, because social inclusion is one of the great problems that Latin America faces, and there are still many people that are not participating in this revolution.
That was a very good comment and very interesting.
Any additional comment? Do you want to comment, Eulogio?
Well, thank you. I'm not going to talk about Venezuela, where clearly we have a social responsibility that we take on with great pride. The people are our owners, but I am going to discuss an example of how companies can help in the battle against poverty. We have, with Petrocaribe, we have a mechanism for financing that adapts itself to the price of crude oil, so that countries use those resources for social investment. For instance, in the years since the founding of Petrocaribe, we have done social investment projects for around $4 billion. On the other hand, we implemented compensation mechanisms so that countries of the Caribbean with limited economies could become productive countries. We have a compensation mechanism in our country by which we've worked at $2.4 billion. We've also, these are some numbers that are very important, but it's not enough compared to what these countries need in order to address their situation of poverty. But with a mechanism as innovative as Petrocaribe's, we can make contributions in this regard. I do think that having different compensation programs complement each other is very important. Adapting ourselves to different price scenarios, using the energy factor as a mechanism for economic stability in regions that require it, in order to be better prepared for rough price changes. So comment, we can continue. One point that we touched tangentially, but that would be interesting to go back to, is that of the new economy, the digitalization of things, innovation. Here we're talking about petroleum, how to distribute basic things such as energy lines. But maybe the question here is for everyone. How do you see the impact of the technology and the digital economy on the energy sector. Perhaps it's more intense in the utility sector, but I wanted to hear your opinions. Perhaps you could comment. In developed countries, for instance, the United States, you can have electric consumption despite all the new appliances, phones, and internet. Energy usage is not increasing. So this is due to the fact that we have smarter networks, smarter grids that are becoming involved. So technology can help us. I think that in developing countries, the per capita consumption of energy is still going to be increasing. We can't improve the quality of life of our people without increasing our energy consumption. But I do think that there are opportunities for leapfrogging, not having to go through all the steps of development that other countries went to, and we can do this by using new technology. It's interesting to see cases where people, such as people in the favela, can use the internet to maybe make purchases. And this is something that happened with mobile technology, for instance. No one imagined that the prepaid phones would explode like they did. All the sales projections fell short by a factor of 5 or 6 because people really did learn to use mobile phones to improve their lives. So of course technology is an important factor, but it has to be in perspective. One, we have to have reliable energy in order to be able to participate in that energy revolution. Okay, well, I think technology plays a vital role in every part of the world and in every sector, but especially in this one. I think the impact is very big. The statistics, for instance, show that Latin America is one of the sectors that is most diversifying its energy sources in terms of alcohol, gas, biodiesel. All of those are elements that are going to help us achieve a greater balance with the help of traditional energies, which will help all these to become viable. So energy has a hugely important role to play. In the case of the last chunk of the chain, which is distribution, reaching people and allowing those people to inform the companies about how well they're being served, whether they're happy or not, if there are problems, how we can improve. Technology is bringing us closer to the final user, and that is extremely valuable in improving our services across sectors.
And then Reinaldo, sorry.
Thank you very much. I'm just listening to my colleagues, and I go back to the fundamental. The current technology should provide all the resources that we need to get electricity and energy to every part of Latin America. We've got to make sure we don't go fast. We've got to take a look at it. This is the only continent that can use all the energy they can afford, and still export. And when you look at it, we are not taking advantage of that. It's not a technology issue, it's not where we gotta go. The current affordable energy to every individual in this continent, it comes through natural gas. It's not gonna come through the crude, it's not gonna come through the oil, through coal and others. Fundamentally, if that infrastructure exists, you will be seeing tremendous economic growth, and after that, it will provide affordable electricity. Today, you got to look at it. Why the price of electricity is so high? It's because price of the raw material is high. Country like Panama is burning fuel to generate electricity. If oil prices is $100, that's going to be high price electricity. When the natural gas in Colombia is sold at $3, with the equivalent to the 1 barrel of oil is $18. It just doesn't take our scientists to figure out we need to create that kind of infrastructure. That's how the success of the North America has been in the energy sector. Get the pipeline, get the gas to the sectors, the electricity would come in the affordable price. My colleagues in here that they are involved in that can tell you we got to go back. Problem in this continent is not due to technology. Current technology can do whatever we want to do and can be able to bring that affordable energy forward.
Good comment. Let's go to Reinaldo.
Wise words, Ali. I think technology, however, can and should continue to help drive efficiency in the system, reduce the downtime of platforms in the oil production, to help the system from not going into blackout situation, to be able to redistribute the energy as necessary. So data plays an important role, okay? I'll just give you one visible example of how digital information can be helping in this area. Today, wind turbines can tap into the cloud and understand where the winds are being produced 50 kilometers away and begin to adjust the angle of the blade as to maximize the capture of that wind. So there's a lot of opportunities for continuing to drive efficiency and improvements in the sector. Okay.
Very good. Any additional comment on technology? I think we are running very short out of time. We have 2 minutes there. Maybe I would say if there is any, just going back to our first question, I think we explored it a little bit now extensively on what should we suggest to the governor, the leaders that are here this afternoon, and so on and so forth. But is there any other message you would like to leave that we didn't touch in order to boost the growth and the energy capability in Latin America?
I think the one thing we haven't touched really is the integration of the energy markets. For example, interconnections. Because you have small markets, they're going to be inefficient. So for example, the CIEPAC, connecting the electric grids of Central America, is important and it has worked. But you also need, interconnections, Chile, for example, Argentina, Brazil. And what we're seeing, for example, with the droughts, this allows countries that have different rain basins to trade energy, makes the system more secure. But also you can take economies of scale. So I think gas markets have to be integrated. You need to have regional hubs for LNG distribution. You can't have every small country have its own. So coordination and integration, that's something that the governments can do in a forum like this to get them going. So there's a lot of good plans, connection, Colombia, Panama, electric connection, that will help, but really make these things a reality.
Very good. Any additional comment? We got 2 more minutes, so so I think.
Can I make a comment? The country that you got to take a look at it. The Prime Minister of Trinidad, she just left. Trinidad is a good example of integration you're talking about. They have industry. They get a gas pipeline system. They export LNG. Trinidad got that integration. I think we can create that integration. And I want to leave the message with you. Everyone in this continent expects the public, private sector to provide affordable energy to them for business, for electricity, for others. That is our responsibility. And we got to find that formula. And I tell you, the resources is not the issue. It's just the willingness to commit to that and make that happen.
Very good. So we are coming to an end. I would like to thank all of our panelists for the different perspectives and the information you brought. I think it was a very rich panel. It was a pleasure and an honor to be here with you today. I want to give an applause to our panelists and to close this session.
Muchísimas gracias a todos por acompañarnos.
Thank you for joining us. Undoubtedly, we've seen very valuable contributions towards making energy affordable. This is a big challenge, and this summit is all about promoting integration across the region. Some other important information brought out this morning was the need to focus on infrastructure development, creating robust energy grids from different sources. We also discussed energy storage, and as was well said, we are wealthy and natural resources, but we need to work on raw resources for the energy to arrive at better prices for industry. Shortly, we will have our next topic.